Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hi, and welcome back to the show. So you're a giver. You've nailed that down. But how are you at receiving? Most people, well, most women in particular, will answer, terrible. I'm just terrible at receiving. It's so uncomfortable. If that's you, listen in, because we are going to talk today in this episode about why it's so important that you should start working on being better at receiving, and how this one block is interwoven into so many areas of your life that you just don't realize. When we're done here, you're going to understand the magnitude of this issue and how crucial it is to your success in your life, in work, in how you connect in relationships. Your ability to receive plays a huge role in most of the things that you yearn for and may not realize that you're blocking from fully experiencing in your life. You know those times we say we get in our own way? Well, this is one of them. This is a big deal. And it is the season of giving. We're in the holiday season at the time of this recording. So it's a great question to ask. How are you at receiving? In her book, Sacred Success, which is a book I think is fantastic, by the way, Barbara Stanny says that receiving is to our soul what eating is to our bodies. It's a source of strength. It's a source of nourishment. It's for growth. So imagine if you had the same visceral, physical, emotional response or discomfort when presented with food as you do when presented with an opportunity to receive. You would be starving. And I think most of us are. I think we're starving. We're starving for connection and intimacy that comes with such vulnerable states that receiving puts us in. We are starving for personal power and freedom, financial freedom. And we're hungry for all these things that come from our capacity for receiving. Now, in this brief podcast today, I am going to help you connect with these other areas of your life that are so important for you to recognize. All are serviced by that same block of your ability to receive. Now, let's just talk about, for instance, your career. In fact, it's been said, I believe this was in the Sacred Success book as well, that there is a direct correlation between our level of success and our ability to receive. You've probably heard that before, but maybe you didn't stop and really think about that, right? And so when I say that to you again, that there is a correlation between our level of success and our ability to receive, it kind of rings true for that idea around manifesting, that you can't resist something and want it at the same time and think you're going to get the outcome that you desire, right? That underlying force of your resistance is sabotaging the very thing that you're so focused on, that you're working so hard towards. And that is the same with receiving. If you can't hold receiving abundance coming your way, if you can't be open to that, if you have an energy that blocks receiving, it is going to show up. How you can receive in your business, how you can receive at work, how you can receive in all these types of areas of your life where you're trying to grow, where you're trying to expand, where you're trying to get bigger or brighter or whatever that looks like. And so it's another area of our lives that we need to consider, wow, why it's so important for me to work on my ability to receive from a spiritual, emotional place. When we look at receiving, when I ask you to look at your receiving and what it's like for you to receive, you're going to look at how you feel in your body when you're receiving. When someone says, oh, I bought this for you, or I made this for you, or I'd like to give you this, or I'd like to help you. How can I help you? What do you feel like in your body? Does it start to cringe? Does it start to sort of get small? Does it start to kind of get tight? And just notice the energy you hold when somebody wants to give to you. And we notice from a spiritual perspective as well that when we look at that energy as we go, we kind of get constricted, as we talked about before in this podcast. You get constricted in their energy, right? Versus expansive. So from that place, it's also a place where we tend to block receiving our connection to our intuition and other parts of ourselves. That universal support does ask of us to surrender and trust in something bigger, right? And so when we look at receiving and we look at the intuitive process, part of that process is what we call rest and receive. And this is, sort of the way I look at it. So rest and receive. And the other one is build and grow, right? And output. Building and output comes second. Rest and receive comes first. Because when we're in rest period is when we get our marching orders, right? It's when we get our hits, our intuitive guidance, when we start getting clarity and motivation. But a lot of us don't go into resting and receiving. And so that receiving part is part of that energy, right? It's also for you emotionally, physically, and spiritually important for you to look at rest as receiving. And so when you know it's time for you to rest, when you know it's time for you to give to yourself, that's also receiving, okay? That's also receiving. Again, I'm highlighting these different areas from career to your spiritual growth to your relationships, all these areas that really take a hit when you don't know how to receive. And so I want you to look at what's it like for you to rest? What's it like for you to receive guidance? Where are you at with that? Noticing what it's like for you to trust. I know that seems like a stretch in terms of the connection, but in order to receive, we do need to trust. What do you need to trust in, right? So some of us need to trust in ways that allow us to feel safe, even when receiving. I trust that this is all part of a balanced, reciprocated relationship. I trust that all is happening for the highest good of all, right? This person needs to give to me as much as I need to receive it. And so understanding in what you trust in order to make receiving feel balanced, even when it comes to rest and for you to go through the rest and receive phase of your intuitive experience, you're looking at resting and trusting that simply by taking the time that you need to go inward, taking the time that you need to slumber, to go dark, to kind of nest for a little bit, to kind of get quiet, that you can trust that that is exactly what is going to get you to where you're going next. And it's an important part of the process. So when we look at receiving, we're also recognizing that for some of us, I don't know if this resonates with you or not, if you have a block to receiving, it's also possible that it's showing you, is mirroring that you have a need for control. Because there's something about receiving that feels like a release of control. And so I want you just to notice that about yourself. Does gripping on tight and saying, I don't need anything, I'm all set, thank you anyway, or, just ignoring or whatever you do when it comes time to receiving, when you get uncomfortable and you get small, do you notice that it feels like maybe a false sense of security and control, like you're controlling the situation so it doesn't get out of control? You don't have to have your emotions get out of control. You're shame spiraling for accepting something or imposter syndrome because you're getting paid a bunch of money for something. So just noticing what happens for you in your relationship with control and safety and all that when it comes to receiving. So let's look at your relationships. Here's the thing I want you to hear about receiving in your relationships. And that is, a lot of times when we have blocks to receiving, we really struggle with intimacy. And so this may not be everybody, but some of you who can say, yes, I have a really difficult time with receiving, you are able to also identify that there's sort of an equal discomfort with intimacy. And by intimacy, I mean really being present and vulnerable with someone else in that intimate moment. Being able to really, truly be physically, emotionally present. And actually, a lot of people, even off that, find that they sort of role play a little bit in their relationships. They might say, when I was younger, I got better at it as I got older, but I sort of role played a lot. And by role played, I don't mean posing as a maid, but rather more like I during my intimate moments with my partner, I would sort of be whatever I thought they wanted me to be, right? When I was dating or when I was in moments where really getting to know somebody, that I would sort of play a role that I thought was a cool role to play, right? Like the role that somebody wanted me to play. And so as we are growing and getting older and maturing at certain stages of life, that becomes a question. You start to recognize, I really struggle with being present. And there's so much that we could go with. That could be an entire episode on its own. But I want you just to recognize that there is something about receiving and your ability to be open and present during intimacy. And so when you are looking at, sort of allowing a love and a care that really deepens the intimacy in your relationship, many people, and such as yourself, are better at giving love than receiving it. And sometimes, I'm just kind of like letting this evolve here, but sometimes if that's you, then you also might find yourself in relationships where it's more comfortable for you to be the one that gives love and receives it less. And so there may be choices that you've made in relationships that put you in relationships that you aren't receiving a lot, that somehow the standard becomes you don't need, because that's what you put out in the beginning, because receiving was so uncomfortable, that you created relationships around that foundation. And in that relationship, not receiving from that person, being the person who gives more and being the person who receives less is sort of a normal part of the dynamic. And I'm not saying that's true for everybody. It's just, it can sort of, you can see how this can unfold, right? You can see how my difficulty in receiving, my difficulty in being truly emotional, vulnerable, it might be difficult. So therefore, if I have a difficulty receiving, then I'm not working really hard to have boundaries to get those needs met, because I'm not receiving that. It's really uncomfortable for me to fight for that. So, or to articulate that. So it's, the path of least resistance might be for you, if this is you, to not have needs, to say, oh no, I'm all set. I'm fine. Because receiving gets kind of brought into whether or not you have the ability to I should say, the self-worth to really stand in having needs, and that it's okay to have needs, and you're worthy of having needs, and you're worthy of receiving. And so that's when we get into self-worth. And really, when we get down to it, for a lot of people, when we look at difficulty receiving, when you're receiving compliments, even someone says, "Hey, you look amazing." You're like, "Oh, thanks." It's really uncomfortable, right? When someone gives you some high level compliment, how do you respond to that? And of course, I'm sure you've heard this elsewhere, so I'm not spending too much time on it, but the best thing for you to do is to really, when you look at small steps and moving forward, is how can I be better at receiving? You're looking at, okay, I just want to start with saying thank you, right? I'm just going to start with acknowledging that as a gift, allowing that to assimilate, right? Allowing that to be brought into my energy field, into my body, into my brain, and sort of allow it and accept it and be thankful and grateful for it. That's sort of like the process of trying to get better at this, is really allowing it, accepting it, trying to even open up your heart to it, like feel good about it and say thank you, right? Be grateful. And, while we're talking about relationships, if you're somebody that has a difficult time receiving, even this holiday season, think about what's it like for you to receive a gift when you haven't given one, right? Let's say you had no idea this person was going to give you a gift. And this gets into power and control. But when somebody gives you a gift that you didn't plan on, or you didn't have a gift to give equally, this can be really triggering for some of us. That receiving something without giving something of equal value can feel really uncomfortable, right? And so then we're like, oh my God, I didn't know. No, I can't accept this. I don't have anything for you. I can't do this. It's so uncomfortable. You start to reject the gift, right? And so now I want you to think for a moment and just empathize with the person who is giving to you because they wanted to. They thought of you and they wanted to give you something. And now you're rejecting it. How is that really showing up in the relationship? Right? And so again, how you can deal with a situation like that is by saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is so amazing. I'm so appreciative. Now, I know part of you wants to say, I wish I got something for you and I didn't because blah, 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 right? I would say rein it in, bring that energy back. I've been there. I do that. I mean, I still catch myself. But for some of us, not everybody, but for some of us, receiving without giving and, having that balance feels really uncomfortable. Now, some of this comes from how we were raised. Some of this comes from your programming. I'll share when I was a kid and I was thinking back to when I started getting my programming around some of this stuff. We would go visit my grandmother and my grandfather. And their house, they lived in New Hampshire, and we would travel from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. And we'd see them often. They were the closer grandparents for us, my family. And next to their house down the street was a penny candy store. It was heaven. It was amazing. And all the kids, we get together, the cousins, and we'd go walk to the penny candy store. I remember very clearly that my grandmother wanted to give me some money for the penny candy store. So she took out $1 or something because that's what things cost back then. But she took out $1 or something to give to me. And my mother stopped me and she said, no. And she taught me that you say no first. You don't just accept handouts. That you say, no, thank you. I'm okay. I don't need that. And I was taught to say no like 3 times before I'm allowed to say yes. And that was a lesson. And so I did that. And I was a good girl and I did that. And so whenever my grandmother offered me money, I would say, oh, no, I don't need it. Thank you. And then she would offer it again. And I say no. And then by the 3rd time, if she stuck around, then I could take it. And then I would go with it. And so that stuck with me, right? That little thing My mom just felt like she was doing, she was teaching me to be respectful. She thought she was teaching me, the things that she learned probably. And what ended up happening is I took that into all levels of my life. And I went on to say, no, I don't need anything. Thank you several times before I let anybody in. And so not everybody waits around for that, and it's a way in which I had a lot of anxiety about receiving. And so saying no became the way to do it. But it also felt like a sabotage or a self-abandonment in a way, because I probably each time really wanted the things in my life that people were offering. And I think that receiving, and this is key, is part of being in a healthy, balanced relationship. So I want you to hear this. If you too were taught to say no, if you too were taught to say, oh my gosh, no, thank you, and to get uncomfortable and to go the other way, look the other way and try to change the subject or whatever, I want you to hear this. You're doing a disservice to the person who's offering. You are disconnecting from them in the relationship at that moment, because the relationships are literally foundationally about giving and receiving. So if you are not good at receiving and you're uncomfortable and you reject that person's offering, what's happening is you're disconnecting in the relationship on a level. And over time, it just makes it a very unbalanced relationship, one that you either get burnt out from and you're resentful in, or one where the person sort of backs away a bit and doesn't feel close to you in the same way they would if they knew that they were worthy of being of service to you. Because when we reject people, it makes it so that they're not worthy. That's just how they can experience that, because the imbalance is you can help them, but they can't help you. And so I want you to think about that next time someone goes to offer you something, and think, I'm doing a disservice in this relationship by making them feel like I can't accept what they're offering. And that in some way, energetically even, there's a disconnect that's happening. I want you to also practice trusting that if you receive this and accept it, that you can trust. Let's say it's the situation with the present, right? Where someone brings you a present this season, and instead of saying, no, oh my gosh, I don't have a gift for you, I can't accept this. You said we weren't going to do this. We weren't supposed to do gifts. I'm so pissed. I'm so angry. Nope, take it back. I can't take it. Instead of doing all that, I want you to say, oh my gosh, this was so thoughtful of you. Thank you so much. And then I want you to take a deep breath and get in your body. And I want you to say to yourself, I trust that our relationship is in balance. I trust that I show up equally. I trust that I offer enough. And that, my friend, is the answer. Being enough, knowing your self-worth, knowing you're worthy of receiving, trusting that things are always in balance. And if they're not, you'll know it. You'll feel it. I think I really have stepped out on this person and I need to step back in. And I also just want to add that receiving is an emotional, physical, and spiritual experience. And it is crucial for recovery and growth and healing, even you receiving from yourself in the form of self-care. But it is part of your healing process. It's part of your process as a soul evolving, is to receive. Much like Barbara Stanley said in the beginning, receiving is to our soul what eating is to our bodies. It is actually very important that you are able to take in and receive and nourish that way, so you can evolve and your heart can stay open and you can be a balanced individual who can stay in connection, in relationship in that process. So that is my tip for this holiday season. When you are faced with receiving and you've got that situation where somebody gives or maybe they don't give, maybe they couldn't give, right? I just want you to notice where you're at with it and how it feels, what triggers you, and how important it is for you to recognize your own self-worth journey as you step into being better at receiving and opening yourself up to that level of connecting and feeling safe. Thank you. And as always, I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a beautiful holiday season, whatever you're celebrating. Stay safe, stay well, and I will see you next week. We will be releasing on New Year's Eve. So we're about to jump into our next level of growth here because we're entering a whole new year, all new opportunities, all new possibilities. And I don't know about you, but that's really exciting. I just love the energy of a new year. So have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers, until next time.